Hi everybody, welcome to Caketastic Cakes. It's Jen and I'm going to show you how I made this beautiful Oreo cookie cake. And it's kind of twisty, so stay with me. All right, so I found this recipe on the internet, as you know I do with most of my recipes, and I'm like, okay, my son's birthday, I'm going to try it out. So I'm going to give you how I did it. This recipe is supposed to make three 6-inch pans. I had to double it in order to get two 8-inch pans out of it. It just wasn't enough. So I don't know where I went wrong, but it just wasn't enough. Now you start by mixing your dry ingredients together. So you're going to have 2 cups of all-purpose flour, 1 cup of sugar. I sifted them, as you can see, into that bowl right there. That's a 1/4 teaspoon of baking soda and then 1 teaspoon of baking powder. Okay, so all my dry ingredients are together in that bowl. Mixing them up, put it aside. Okay, so right now it's like, okay, we're good. We got our dry ingredients. We'll do our wet ingredients, right? Nay, nay, not so quick. If you know the nay, nay, you know what comedian I listen to sometimes. Now I've got my 2 8-inch pans here because I realized I forgot to grease them. So I smeared some Crisco all around it, just some vegetable shortening. I put a little sprinkle of flour in there, as you can see. I am just rolling my pans around to make sure that the flour sticks all over the Crisco, so I'm not having any cake sticking accidents. You want to make sure you're ready. You don't want to go through all the effort and then lose it all. Okay, getting back to the cake though. Now you're going to take 1.5 sticks of butter. This is unsalted butter that has been brought to room temperature. Stick them in your mixer and then mix them up. And you're like, okay, this is fine. We start with butter lots of times. So far so good. But normally you put like the sugar with the butter, but you don't here. Okay, once your butter is nice and creamed, you saw it was all bright and fluffy. Then you start adding all of your dry ingredients into the butter. So yeah, you want to do it like that. So okay, I'm just very gradually adding all the dry to the butter, and this is sped up, so of course it looks like I'm just like, get in there, dry ingredients, but I took my time with it, and it kind of forms like a pie crust. I don't know if you guys have ever made pie crust before, or like the crumb topping if you're making a crumb top apple pie. That's really the consistency I have here before you add the water to the pie crust. That's what I'm dealing with here, so it's kind of like chunky crumbs. And it looks good, it smells nice, so far so good. It's just a different recipe. I'm just not used to this kind of setup, I guess. Now that I've mixed my butter and my dry ingredients together, I'm using my spatula there, as you can see, to scrape, scrape, scrape. Get all those crumbs off the sides, and I'm putting it into a separate bowl because I need my mixer again. We're not going to start adding wet ingredients to this yet. So instead, we're going to take some milk. I've got a half a cup of whole milk, again, room temperature. I'm going to add to it a half a cup of sour cream that was brought to room temperature. It's kind of hard to measure, so you might have to bang it around a little bit, but get it in there. So now we've got a nice little mix there going of our milk and sour cream. Then you're going to add some vanilla extract, 1 teaspoon of vanilla extract. So basically we're putting now all of our really wet ingredients together. So we had our dry that we mixed together. We had butter that we did by itself and then added to the dry. And now we're doing the rest of the wet. So I am going to now add 3 egg whites. I do it into a separate bowl because just like you saw there, I ended up piercing the yolk and it tainted everything. So I had to throw it out, do over, wash the bowl. So I'm going again. I've got my second egg white in there. Going to add it to my mix one at a time. Here comes my last one. Just like before, some people stick their hands in the bowls to just like lift the egg yolk out. Do it if you want. I don't care how you do it. Some people have the egg yolk sucker thing. Whatever. Just, get your yolk out. Once you have your 3 egg whites in, mix, 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 mix. I'm just mixing. I'm not whipping. I'm not, beating it really hard or anything. Once it's thoroughly mixed together, now you start incorporating your butter crumb mix into the wet. So just like before, it seems like I really just shoved it all in there. I gave it a little bit of time. I did it a little bit gradually. But once they mix together, then you have this really nice smelling cake batter. And it's like, okay, again, it's a little on the thicker side. I don't know if I've done something wrong, but I followed the directions. I figured it out. This was take 2, by the way. I actually threw one away because I put them together out of order. And for certain cakes, you can't do that. Now what I have here is a bunch of Oreo cookie crumbs. I took an entire sleeve. I got 2 packs of Oreos, full-size packs, ground them up in my food processor so that they basically turn into Oreo Dust. And I've got 1 cup's worth of chopped up Oreos in there that I'm going to then add to my batter. Once you add it to the batter, you don't want to beat it in. You just want to kind of fold it in. So I'm using my spatula, lift and fold, smear it around a little bit until it's well incorporated. Now, once you're happy with how mixed up it is, you're going to add it into your cake pans to bake. Now, before you do, or if you want to consider this, you don't have to grind up your cookie crumbs as finely as I did. I used my food processor, so they came out like really fine crumbs. Like those black crumbs that you saw, they had the cream and everything in there. If you don't want them that thick, or I'm sorry, that fine, do it by hand. Use your rolling pin in a bag technique. Do whatever you got to do, until you're happy with it. Now, this is where I said before that I don't know what the recipe was thinking, but I did not get 3 6-inch cake pans worth of batter out of this recipe, so I ended up doubling it. I went back, did the whole thing again in order to get 2 8-inch pans. Now I'm sticking my 2 8-inch pans in the oven at 340 degrees Fahrenheit for about half an hour, or until it tests like it's baked well enough. Meanwhile, the buttercream. I'm going to start by putting 3 sticks of unsalted butter into my mixer again. I was doing a lot of washing of that mixer this day. And the butter is brought to room temperature, so you can see how it's kind of mushy and softer. I'm just beating it up here with my mixer until it gets nice and creamy. And then I'm going to add 5 cups of confectioner's sugar to it. I'm adding it a little bit at a time. You can kind of see it flies all over the place if you add it too quickly. And I'm happy with how it looks. Then it's time to add 1 1/3 cups of more crushed cookies to the buttercream icing now. So when you make this cake, if you make this cake in this buttercream, you're going to need like a lot of Oreo cookies. I think I used 2 sleeves of or 2 packages almost of Oreo cookies. Okay, once the buttercream is done, you're going to put it aside. You're going to take your cakes out. You're going to have to handle them carefully. I am using my spatula to loosen them up on the sides. They pop right out. As you can see, they aren't the most leavened of cakes in the world, but they're okay. They've got a nice little dome on the top that I'm cutting off for cake scraps for later, which are always delicious. Or if you are so inclined, you could always make them into cake pops or something. Now, this is always the best part, is when you put it all together. I took a little bit of my icing, as you see, pressed my first layer of cake down. It looks a little bit darker here because I ended up adding a simple syrup to it. This cake, again, maybe it's me, maybe I didn't follow the directions properly, I don't know, but I found it to be a little dry, so I ended up simple syruping the cake tiers to make, or the cake layers, in order to give them a little bit more moisture. Now I'm putting a big old serving of that delicious buttercream icing with the cookie crumbs in them. In between, put the other layer on top upside down so you have a nice flat surface on the top to work with. And then cover that with the icing as well. And the icing is kind of cool looking because the way the cookie crumbs were all ground up so perfectly fine and very evenly with my food processor, kind of gave it like a neat granulated look, but it still spread smoothly. So it was nice. I like how it looked. I like how it felt to work with it. It came out pretty good, I gotta say. Thumbs up on the buttercream, thumbs in the middle, I'll say, for the cake dryness and raising. But again, maybe it was me, who knows. It was still delicious, so I really can't complain too much. As you can see, I got my top all covered up, working on my sides. When it's all nice and covered on the sides, then it's time to smooth it out and make it look pretty. So I'm going back over it with my large spatula, taking some of the extra away, wipe it off. Going to get my small spatula in there so I can, do a little fine tuning. If you take too much away, you can always add some more back, kind of like you're seeing me do just a moment ago there. I've got my actual fancy schmancy icing smoother there that I'm using too. Just whatever you got, just do the best you can. Once your sides look good, Level off the top as best you can. And again, this is always as best you can. It doesn't have to be perfect. It's cake. You know, it's going to be amazing no matter what, especially if you have a good recipe. All right, now I have some extra crumbs, so I'm taking them in my hand and I am just kind of, as you can see, pouring them into my hand and then kind of patting them up against the side of the cake at the bottom so I can make a crumb border around the whole bottom of the cake. As long as you keep adding, you know, roughly the same amount to your hand and patting it in pretty much the same way each time, you're going to get a pretty level amount of cookies and a pretty level height as well around your cake. And it's going to be a mess. I'm not going to, you know, beat around the bush on this one. The crumbs get everywhere. So I keep re-scraping them, get those loose ones off because you can always reuse them. And then put them back in my hand, pat them on up on the sides again, you know, until you get a nice ring going all the way around the cake. Once you are happy with the thickness, you know, go as high or low as you want. Make it, you know, thinner as you go up, whatever. Get fancy with it if you want. But once you're happy with it, then it's time to clean up. So I brushed away most of the big stuff with my hand, just using my fingers. And now I have a large dry paintbrush. This is an Atico paintbrush. It is used for cake decorating, for painting icing and that kind of stuff. But I also use it for maintenance and cleanup. So I'm just sweeping off my cake plate there. I'm using the back of my nail to press the loose crumbs into the icing a little bit, but you gotta go carefully because you can very easily push too hard and cause like a little divot, which I kind of created at one point. Maybe right there. We'll pretend we didn't see it. So just keep turning it and then you don't see it anymore. Okay. Now, I went to the store and just bought some cake drizzle, some microwavable cake drizzle, because I like the easy road sometimes. And you get a very nice color. And I gotta say, I've used a couple different brands. I've used very fancy schmancy ones, which work beautifully. And I've used the $5 Walmart ones, which work really well. So, yeah, I don't know if it's worth an extra $10 for fancy schmancy, honestly. But anyway, I did a circle of black drizzle around my cake, stuck it in the fridge, as you can see, because it looks a little different now. I stuck it in the fridge so it would get nice and cold, so when I add the white on top, it wouldn't just totally melt it and make smears of gray or anything. So once it was cool, like I said, and just went back with now my white going on top of it because Oreos, you know, black and white, it goes together so perfectly. And I am filling in a little bit more of the top with the white as well. I didn't go far at all with the black as you saw, but the white I'm going to bring it in a little bit more in order to cover up the top of the cake a bit because you're going to see why in a second. There's that second sleeve of Oreos I was telling you about. Okay, so now I'm going to make a ring of Oreos around the top of my cake and they're going to fall over just like that one on the end did, but that's okay. Just keep going, just keep swimming along. Line up your Oreos so they're leaning one against the other. Try to make your circle as neat as you can. Mine is a little bit crooked, not gonna lie. And I can see it here too. And also if you're gonna put them in, if you're gonna do this, when you put them in, that white drizzle is still wet. So you might want to rotate them so if any sticks to the cookie and you have to readjust it, you're not gonna see a mess there. Now that I got my circle nice and tidy, I'm just using my extra buttercream icing to make some little peaks in the center, one in the middle just for good luck. And to top it off, ting, there you go. And there you have it. A very cool Oreo cake that tastes really good. It was a weird recipe, like I said, but it was really good. Worth trying. Definitely worth trying. So I hope you found this video helpful. Please like and subscribe because it helps me out as well. I've got a lot of other videos out there, so please take a look. And as always, thank you for watching Caketastic Cakes.